Hi, everybody. Bon dia. I'm going to go in English because that was as it was previewed, but you feel free to pose questions in Spanish, Catalan, anything, as long as we communicate with each other. That's the message. I have half an hour, right? 30 minutos? 30 minutos? 20, okay. ¿Me avisas del tiempo? Vale. All right, so I'm going to explain how social innovation can contribute to fighting the climate crisis that we're living at the moment. All right? So who we are an NGO, nonprofit organization. We're dedicated to empowering entrepreneurs that develop climate solutions that are inclusive, cooperative, and sustainable. So I have a question for you to start. Okay. I speak very fast. How does climate change worry you? Are you worried about climate change? And how much? Too much or too little? Raise your hand if you're very little worried about climate change. Raise your hand if you're very worried about climate change. Cool. Thank you for coming. How does it make you feel, climate change? More empowered or more, let's say, sad, sorry, overwhelmed? More overwhelmed or more empowered? Overwhelmed. Raise your hands. Like you don't know what to do, like lost. And empowered to do something. Nobody raising hands, one or the other? Okay. Somewhere in between. Climate crisis, threat or opportunity? Threat, raise your hands. Opportunity? Okay. Both, perhaps? Cool. That's what we call a climate crisis. The science behind climate change. Somebody here knows about the science. So there's a very thin atmosphere surrounding the Earth, and it's so thin that we can alter it, humanity, right? That's what we are in the Anthropocene right now. There is so much carbon dioxide in the atmosphere that no human being has ever lived in these conditions. You know perhaps the graphs of CO2 emissions over history and the corresponding temperature increases. They are pretty much the exponential that is the human signature, as it's called, or the Anthropocene. So the consequences of that are happening every day, as we know, more dramatically as we go along. You've seen the hurricanes in the US, the devastating floods, the wildfires going on in California right now are the most devastating, most deadly in history. This summer in Europe, we've had a tremendous drought in Northern Europe. And this is pictures from UK, from Sweden, and from Germany. So wildfires and droughts in these places that are not accustomed to. In Spain, we had the remnants of a hurricane that just went through Spain in October. Hurricane, what was the name of it? Leslie, all right? And also, we've had an increase in intensity and frequency of torrential downpours, like what happened in Palma de Mallorca, Barcelona, Valencia, the Castellón recently. So last year in November, we had a warning from 15,000 scientists all over the world saying, hey, we are going in the wrong direction. Humanity is headed to extinction if we don't do anything, if we don't change course. So scientists are telling it as it is, speaking the truth. We might be entering, bear with me a few minutes. I know that I'm scaring the hell out of you, but I'm going to propose some solutions at the end, okay? So stay with me. I'm just a messenger, don't shoot me. So we are probably entering what's called a hothouse effect. It's a retrofeedback effect where the different components of the climate system, you know, the oceans, the coral reefs, the permafrost in the tundra, the different ocean circulation currents, they're all interacting with one another, and also the melting of the glaciers and the Antarctica ice sheet in a way that we don't know what's happening, but it's looking bad. So it's a complex situation. Nobody knows the answers. What we know is that comparing reality nowadays with the predictions that we did in the past, like 20 years ago, we are in the worst case scenario, or even worse. So the precautionary principle says that we need to act. We cannot wait any longer because we are headed for catastrophe. And at last, some world leaders are saying it, we are losing the battle against climate change. We're losing the battle. Macron was the first one, and now the UN Secretary General is saying it as it is. Climate change is advancing much faster than our capacity to adapt. That's the reality. But this is the latest science. 3 weeks ago, the IPCC, the most recognized world institution on climate change science, published this report, global warming 1.5 degrees Celsius. And it was an eye-opener in the sense that we have 12 years to reduce CO2 emissions by 50%. That means really ending the era of fossil fuels. Otherwise, by 2040, we might already reach what's considered now the safe level of 1.5 degrees above pre-industrial level. So 12 years to change everything. And this is even latest science after the report. Several articles have been published by different scientific organizations saying that we might even have less time than that because oceans have been absorbing more heat than we thought previously, 60% more heat than we thought. So, and last week or a couple weeks ago, this biodiversity study was published by WWF saying that we are in the midst of the 6th mass extinction, and humanity is part of the ecosystem of Earth, and we are headed for extinction as well. All right, and just yesterday, I think it was, or 2 days before, the International Energy Agency, no less, said that we cannot build any more fossil fuel power plants or infrastructure. No more, not one more. This is the end of it. It's clear, it's the International Energy Agency saying this. So what's the cost behind this, all right? We're moving towards hope, so bear with me. In July was the New York Times published this terrible article. I mean, very well documented, but the thesis was completely wrong, as you will see, saying that we're losing everything. But thanks God, Naomi Klein replied immediately. She is one of the legendary climate activists from Canada, Naomi Klein. This book is amazing, Capitalism versus the Climate, saying that, no, we're not losing Earth, we're losing the economy. But we can let the economy collapse, capitalism, and change society. Saying that because the article in the New York Times was saying that humanity is lost because of the nature of human beings. We tend to focus on the short term, and we don't see the long-term trends, and we don't care about future generations. But Naomi Klein was saying, no. That's not the nature of every human being. That's only a few human beings. The most of us, we care about the common good. So there's hope, right? And Nicolas Hulot, the French Minister of the Environment, just resigned a few weeks ago, well, months ago, telling Macron, his president, I'm sorry, but he's an ecologist. He's a real ecologist. I'm sorry, but I cannot protect the environment if you don't let me change the economic model. And Macron was saying, I'm sorry, we're not changing the economy. So no way. And Spain, the same. Yayo Herrero, perhaps you know her. She's one of the most eco-feminist, the best representative eco-feminist movement in Spain, one of the best, saying, hey, we're worried always about the economy decelerating, but what we need to worry is about social exclusion, social inequalities, all these things. So long as the papers only publish these headlines, worrying about GDP and economy, we're lost. This is not the way. We need to focus on social inclusion, social integration, and environmental protection. So there's a lot of inequalities in the world. 8 men, 8 white male of advanced age, mostly, possess as much wealth as 50% of the poorest population in the world. That's terrible. In Spain, the same. There's a lot of young people at risk of being excluded socially and poverty. There's a lot of inequality in climate change. It's the same thing, the same 2 faces of the same coin. Because the most vulnerable people are suffering the most devastating consequences of climate change: heat, floods. And here's the map that tells the story. This is the ecological footprint of countries. In the reddest countries are the ones that are surpassing their biocapacity, capacity to sustain life within their borders. So for us to consume more than we have, others have to consume a lot less than they have. So this is the unfairness behind climate change and inequalities. But here comes Derney Dorlin. She published this book, a groundbreaking book, The Equality Effect, saying that it's really the richest people who pollute the most and the poorest people who pollute the less. So there's a correlation between wealth and pollution, or carbon CO2 emissions, all right? This is for people and for countries. Within countries, this is super interesting. The most unequal countries, and Spain is right at the top, number 6. The most unequal countries, with the Gini coefficient at the highest, are the ones that pollute the most. So the US, where there's a lot of inequalities, there's a lot of rich people, and a lot of homeless people as well, are the ones that pollute the most because of inequalities. There's a correlation. Economic growth doesn't create jobs anymore. Not anymore. It was okay at the beginning, not anymore. We need to change the indicators. Definition of progress. Growth is not green. Growth is not green. So what's the opportunity? It was published in the report. It's very clear there. Here, this is the curve that we need to care about. These are the history, the evolution of CO2 emissions, and this is where we need to go. You know, the dotted line. We need to reduce to net zero emissions as a civilization in 20 years. Well, before 2050. So that means we need to change everything. Even the scientists that usually don't get into politics, they were this time. Because we need to change everything, all aspects in society. Far-reaching, unprecedented changes are needed. Some are underway already, so that's good news, but we need to accelerate them and scale the impact dramatically. So here's the question. Is it time for a post-growth economy? An economy focused on well-being, perhaps, happiness, different social indicators, not just growth. Yes, it's time for that. So solutions. All right, this is the good part. Are you okay so far? Yeah? So there's two potential pathways for solutions. One is called geoengineering. You've heard of this? Geoengineering thing. It's massive scale solutions at a planetary level, like putting mirrors in space to reflect sunlight. And capturing CO2 from the atmosphere with machines that we still don't have at a market level. And people that you wouldn't imagine, like Donald Trump, are seeking advice to apply geoengineering solutions. But thanks God, scientists are saying geoengineering is not a solution to climate change because the effects, the collateral damage, can be much, much greater than climate change because we don't know. If we put a giant solar mirror in space, what's going to happen to plants and algae? And so we shouldn't do that. We shouldn't let these people do that for us. So the problem is not technology, it's a social problem. Climate change is a social problem. It's not an environmental problem. Environmental is the consequence. The cause is a social misorganization. So we need social change, we need social innovation, and that starts with democracy. The director of Greenpeace USA, she was saying it very clearly, to protect the planet, we need a healthy and functioning democracy. We need more democracy. And I think Barcelona is doing well in that regard. So we need to focus on community, local communities, the common good, the economics of happiness, on people, on cities, not nationalism, not countries. We need to focus on what matters. There are different theories of social change. I'm not going to enter into that. Have a look at this book, Hope in the Dark, Rebecca Solnit. But now there's a petition online. Check this one out and sign it if you want at wemove.eu, telling the European Commission, hey, enough of growth. We want well-being economy. We want a different dashboard to measure progress, human progress. So there are people telling the politicians in Brussels, hey, we need a different way of looking at our society. And some leaders are doing this, and our women and our young are taking action. The Prime Minister of New Zealand, Jacinda Ardern, she has changed GDP by what she calls the Standard of Living Framework as a triple bottom line indicators to see the progress of New Zealand. So it's possible. And she has said, hey, we're going to go 100% renewable by 2035. That's ambitious. That's transformative. And cities are doing their job as well. New York City just, a few months ago, divested all their public money, public funds from fossil fuels. And that inspired Paris, that did the same, or is looking to do the same. And of course, Barcelona is in a good path as well. Many cities are already banning diesel cars and hopefully all fossil fuel-driven vehicles. Barcelona is among them. So by 2020, well done. And even, recovering the right to energy as a right for citizens in their cities, the right to clean, renewable energy, distributed, democratic. And cities are demanding more power at the global arena. So it's been created the U20, which is like the G20 but for cities. So global governance is changing as well. Cities, and Ada Colau, one of them, is demanding more power in the global arena. So this is good. And even kids. There's 21 kids that have sued the Trump administration for climate inaction. And the lawsuit has been accepted by the Supreme Court in the US. So 21 kids against Donald Trump. That's the future. Yeah, they're demanding the constitutional right for a livable and healthy planet to be upheld. And there's a lot of people rising for action. There's been a lot of demonstrations around the world for climate action and jobs and equality. People are rising up. And I like this sign there. To change everything, we need everyone. And it's true. We need everyone here. Solar energy and renewable energies are plummeting in their costs, so there's a lot of opportunities for investment, especially now in Spain that, at last, el impuesto del sol has been derogated. So things are looking good in solar energy. If you have any pennies in your pocket, please invest. Especially in community energy, owned by neighborhood communities and distributed across cities. This collaborative mentality is what can take us out of the hole. And it applies to everything, to food. So urban gardens that are based they're managed by communities. Co-housing, co-living, everything that has to do with sharing cities is the future if we want to consume less hate. So even financial cooperatives exist already instead of banks. The ownership is shared. Even telecom cooperatives. Did you know that you don't need Vodafone, Telefonica, these people anymore? There's Eticom, for instance, is an ethical and friendly telecom operator. So social innovation, radical, transformative, disruptive innovation that has shared leadership, that builds equity and sovereignty in communities. That can be a definition. So I don't have a lot of time. You can have a look at these authors. And social entrepreneurship is social innovation with a business engine behind. So a business model that allows for economic regeneration from the inside. All right? Let's put some examples. I did something wrong. So how to mainstream this? 5-step action plan. Framing the problem. To me, this picture tells everything. There was the floods in Venice a few weeks ago. I shared it on the WhatsApp group. People carrying Louis Vuitton bags in the middle of a flood. This is the drama of capitalism. We don't understand that buying these things is what causes the problem. So climate and inequality crisis, the cause is growth, and growth has to do with consumerism and individualism, so it's a cultural issue, and that has to do with values that is related to lack of empathy and lack of natural appreciation. So that's the problem, big one. But we can imagine, dream about a future where these problems, these challenges are addressed, are completely achieved. So we'll look at the challenges, go to the future, imagine a perfect future, go back to the present, look for green science in the present, people that are doing the good things. And we try to mainstream those green science into blossoming forest or tropical Amazon. So that's what we're going to try to do. Look for green science, like here in Barcelona. Panapedal, cargo bikes, delivery on cargo bikes, last mile. La Rue Skidiwi is a weekly eco-markets in local neighborhoods. Cycle Green, incentivized sustainable mobility, growing pallet, urban gardens in pallets and in rooftops. Solti Solar is a sharing platform between owners of rooftops and distributors of solar panels. So these are entrepreneurs that are creating social change that contributes to fighting climate change and inequalities, because they create jobs. And I keep pressing the wrong button. So what we do is we bring these people to world decision makers at the COPs, United Nations Climate Change Conferences, every year. That was in Paris, where the historic Paris Agreement was reached. Yeah, we did well. Well, not so much. That was in Marrakesh. The following year, the entrepreneur, he participated in a panel by the United Nations on SDGs. Marrakesh was okay. We decided we needed to cooperate. Next year in Bonn, it was good because the Fiji Island was the host, the co-host. Although it was hosted in Germany, Fiji Island was the leading nation. And they decided that we need to step up climate ambition if they are to survive, because this is a small island nation in the Pacific. And if their waters raise a little too much, they're going to disappear. You see the vanishing land already there. So for these people, it's survival. And within this COP, there was the Trump administration that was just elected. They had the official pavilion. And the pavilion was somehow hijacked by activists saying, because, of course, Trump was bringing people from the fossil fuel industry to the climate change conference. How can you do that? So activists were saying, no. You cannot speak about clean coal or clean oil. There's no such thing as clean coal or clean oil. So people demonstrated inside the US pavilion. And of course, there were non-governmental actors like Terminator or Al Gore, these people saying, hey, Donald, we're doing what you're not doing. And of course, cities for the climate. This is the best zone at the COPs, and this year is going to be in Poland. Cities cooperate, cities exchange best practices. Cities are the way forward. And this year, it's happening in Poland, in Katowice, a small town where there's a lot of coal power plants. And we're bringing an entrepreneur from Bologna who is tackling plastic pollution in the center of Bologna, in the university district. So in order to create social innovation projects, you need to bring together all these actors. The thinkers, the makers, the activists, the enablers, right? Kind of what's happening here. Climate Innovation Labs is focusing on climate solutions. This is what we do. This year we've run what we call Young Ecopreneurs Climathons, so hackathons that are focused on climate solutions for young entrepreneurs at the university level. It was a lot of fun in 9 cities. So to strengthen the local location, there's a lab, and the lab has to be at the heart of an ecosystem of multi-stakeholders where they share a vision. Like, we're going to go 100% renewable in Barcelona by 2035. That's a common vision that we can share, right? And then you develop the strategy from there, and you sort of foment a different type of education, all right? Focused on empathy and nature appreciation, as I was saying before. And then you cooperate with other cities. I've seen here there's a lot of cities from around the world that have come to this summit. So that's what we have to do. Exchange best practices, models that work on the ground, in order to scale up impact globally. And to conclude, perhaps you know about this woman, fantastic, one of the greatest thinkers of our times on social change, Rebecca Solnit. Read this book, Hope in the Dark. She wrote it right after George W. Bush won the re-election in 2004, because there was a lot of despair and sadness in the American people at the time. But it's equally valid today because of Donald Trump, etc. So it tells you that although in the spotlight you have the big guys, and usually guys, doing wrong things, usually, if you look closely at the margins, if you look at the fringes of society, in the dark, where there's no spotlight, people are doing good things. It's called the invisible revolutionaries. So there is hope in dark times. We just need to know where to look. So thank you very much, and it's time for questions. Venga, venga, come on.
Well, thank you very much. Nice. Thank you very much for this presentation. Well, we're talking about making... Really? So we're talking about the mainstream, like the strategy to make it mainstream. But do you really think it has a chance to happen in how long should we, how to say, what would be the plan, the strategic plan, the long-term vision? What do you, the projection, let's say?
Well, it's very simple. We have 12 years to reduce CO2 emissions by 50%, to halve them. So nobody knows how to do that. But Rebecca was saying that the revolution is going to come in pieces and from the ground up. So there is no strategy that's going to come from the United Nations or from national governments. It's going to be different solutions at the citizen level. And we cooperate, we join together, and we scale up. But there's no master plan that's going to solve everything.
No, it was just about your view, because what is raising more is far right, and like this is like the mainstream is not this. I'm sorry, this is a bit depressing what I'm saying, but let's face it, So well, I don't know. It was only what could it be?
Yeah, but be hopeful. Rebecca says, I love this woman. She says, hope is in between optimism and pessimism. Optimistic people tend to think that everything's going to be all right, like Bob Marley, no matter what you do. And pessimistic people think everything is going to go downward, no matter what you do, because there's powerful forces in the world that we cannot do anything against them, the Donald Trumps, the Bolsonaros, etc. But hope is in the middle, meaning that the future is not determined. We don't know the future. We can shape the future. We can change the future. We have the power to influence the future in a way. In a small or big way, we'll see. But don't be pessimistic, neither pessimistic nor positives, because we, small people, doing small things in a lot of places, we can do a lot of things. That was Galeano who said that.
Thank you.
Maybe your reaction. I think a lot of time about, are we going into the wall? Are we going to hit the wall? And now I am trying to be relaxed about that. If we go into the wall, but if we have done a lot of things to try not to go too fast, then we will be resilient, even if we go into a situation that we do not know now. So the thing is to do a lot of connection between people so that we know how to manage even if the situation gets worse.
Yes, exactly. Part of the solution, even if we are heading towards collapse, we can be prepared for collapse, changing our societies by, for example, buying food from local farmers instead of in the supermarket. Because at some point, Kiwis from New Zealand are going to stop coming. They will. And so we need to be prepared to, be self-sustainable in our local communities. So by building relationships, by, building local economies, things like that. Think local. I think we need to change the scale. Enough of multinationals and things. Let's focus on local commerce and local people. One more?
I think it's quite difficult to change all of a sudden and move to local, not from our individual perspective, but I mean, I work with big companies in the sustainability field, and I find it quite struggling because, I mean, it's really surprising how little it's been done compared to what can be done. So how can you work also with this, with the current economic system, because obviously we're not going to bring this down tomorrow, so how can we do it in a way that everyone is in the same boat?
You said it. We need everyone here. And large companies have lower resources, so they have to be part of the solution. So when I consult big companies, sometimes I do. They're not afraid of me. They're okay. The first thing, when we try to build a climate action plan for a multinational, the first thing I tell them, what's the difference in pay gap, in payroll between the CEO and the lowest entry-level employee? And they say 300 times. I say, okay. So there's a correlation between equality and climate change. So if you want to fight climate change, you need to build equality inside your company. Number one step. And they say, okay. But that's number one step, building equality within your network. And for that, you need to empower everyone. But some people are willing to do it, yeah. They realize that you don't need so much money to be happy. So, muchas gracias.